In the previous video lessons, we have talked about the bar and its beats, and we also have introduced some symbols which represent different sounds. And these symbols are called notes, of course. And we introduced different symbols to represent one note, one sound lasting one beat, which is called a quarter note. Also, it is called a crotchet. And then we introduce another symbol which represents a sound lasting 2 beats, while this symbol in this case is called a minim or a half note. And then we introduce a third symbol, which is a note which lasts 4 beats. And in this case, this note is called a whole note or semi breve, or also in Italian it is called semi breve. Well, in today's lesson we are going to introduce some new symbols. And first of all, we are going to introduce a new symbol which represent, so it is a note which represent a sound which lasts only half a beat. Okay, before we start with this, I want to remind you what kind of examples we are using, because it is important. It has to be very cleared which kind of example we are using. So we are going to focus for a moment on it. Okay, so we're going to use this kind of examples. We have 4 beats. And we are not going these examples to count every beat. I mean, we don't count 1, 2, 3, 4, but instead we're going only to hit. I'm going to hit my pencil on the desk corresponding to each beat. So I will have this, while it is the same that having 1, 2, 3, 4, but I don't count the numbers. I don't say the numbers, because I need to use my voice to emit different sounds corresponding to the different beats. So in this case, since in the previous video lesson we used a generic sound, which is an A, which is something we call ah. I sang this ah. Instead, today we're going to use such a different thing. I'm not using ah, only the A, but I'm also using the T before the A. So this sound which will be a T, ta, ta, ta. Why am I using the T before the A? Because I need something stronger, something more precise. Before we need to have something. I need to know exactly when my sound is emitted. So with a T, I am more precise in which. With a T, I hear exactly when the sound is emitted. So in this case, for example, I have one sound for each beat. So I have 4 different sounds, and each of these sounds last 1 beat each. And this will be I can sing these 4 beats. I can sing these 4 different sounds while hitting my desk in this way: ta, 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 ta. So, as in the previous video lessons, I'm having something very clear. I am emitting 4 different sounds. Each sound lasts 1 beat. So, in this case, which is the symbol I should use to represent this sound which lasts 1 beat? Of course, it should be a crotchet or a quarter note, because in the previous video lesson we said that we use this kind of symbol with this note to represent a sound lasting 1 beat. Okay, so we have to move a step forward, as we said before. We have to introduce something new, a new symbol, a new note lasting only half a beat. So let's take a look at this example. In this case, I have 4 beats. On the first beat, I have a sound which lasts 1 beat. On the third beat and on the fourth beat, I have 2 different sounds lasting each 1 beat. But on the second beat, I have something new. I have 2 different sounds, and each sound which lasts exactly half a beat. So since on the first, on the third, and on the fourth beat, I have 3 different sounds lasting each 1 beat. On the second beat, I have 2 different sounds which last half a beat each. Okay, so how can I sing? How can I execute this kind of example? Let's see at this. Ta 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 ta. Let's try this again. Ta 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 ta. I think it is very clear. On the second beat, I have 2 different sounds, and each of these sounds lasts half a beat. So now I have to introduce a symbol which represents this kind of sound lasting only half a beat. And and now I have to introduce which is the question we have to ask ourselves is, which is this symbol which represents this sound lasting half a beat? And here it is. This symbol is called it has 2 different names. It is called an 8th note, but it also is called a quave. Okay, so it is as a symbol. If we have to describe, it is something like very similar to the crotchet, but because we have a black dot with a vertical line. But in this case, since in the case of the crotchet of a quarter note, we only have a black dot and a vertical line. In this flag, we also have a flag which is attached on the vertical line. And it is important that we have to distinguish two different cases, 2 different situations. Since in the first 3 different kind of notes we have introduced, so the quarter note, the half note, and the whole note, we always use the same symbols to represent them, independent on we don't have to choose from different symbols. There is only one symbol for each of these notes. In the case of a quave, or we can call it an 8th note, we have to make a distinction, because in the first case we have to make this distinction. The first case is if this 8th note is isolated, so we have an isolated 8th note. And the second case is the case in which this note, this 8th note, these quaves, is tied to other notes which are which have a duration which can be the same of an 8th note or less than an 8th note. So in the first case, if this 8th note is isolated, I find it as an isolated 8th note, I have to use this symbol, the symbol we described before. So the black dot, vertical line, and a flag. But if the 8th note or the quave is tied, we find it in a group of different notes or other notes that could be also 8 notes, but also other notes with a duration which is shorter than the one of the eighth note, we have to use another symbol. So we have to tie these two different notes. In this case, we have this is the case of two eighth notes. So this is a group of two eighth notes. So in this case, we have to use, we have to tie them together, and we use this horizontal line, which is called a beam. So we say that these notes are beamed together. So this is quite very important, because this is the only case we find for the first time. And while, as I said before, in the case of a crochet or a minim or a semi-breve, we don't have this problem. We don't have the problem to make a distinction between different cases of an isolated note or a group of notes. This is the first case, I can say a new situation for us. Okay, so I hope this is clear. Then in this case, we have solved our problem. We have found the symbol to represent the note, which represent a sound lasting half a beat. As I said before, it is called an eighth note or a quave. And in this case, we have a group of two eighth notes, so we have to use this kind of symbols. So in this case, I will use these different symbols to represent this bar. So let's try this example. Let's try to execute this example. Let's try to sing these notes again. Ta 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 ta. Okay. One important thing I want to highlight is that in the case of an eighth note, the sum of two eighth notes, the duration which I obtain by the sum of two eighth notes, give me always the duration always corresponds to the duration of a quarter note. So, for example, in the previous example, I have two different notes, two eighth notes, and the total sum, the total duration of these two notes will correspond, of course, to a beat, so to a quarter note, while the quarter note corresponds to a beat. Okay, and this is quite intuitive, of course, because 1/8 plus 1/8 give me always 1/4. So this is quite intuitive. So in corresponding to a duration of 1/4, I can have instead two notes of 1/8 each. Okay, and of course the total sum of my notes, of the duration of my notes, will always be of 4/4, like as in the previous example we saw in the previous lessons. So in this case we have 1/4, then we have 1/8 plus 1/8, so another fourth, 1/4. Here we have 1/4, so 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 4/4. So the total sum is always of 4/4.